Ladies and gentlemen, from a catacomb buried deep beneath the streets of the New World Order, this is the Remnant Underground. And now, here's your host, Michael J. Matt.
That
Keep it together.
I don't know what to say about that.
That's pretty bad.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Remember that Andy Rooney from the old 60 Minutes? I've just watched this. This is the Synod going on over in Rome, and I was reminded of, of old Andy, you know. Is it just me, or have all the cardinals of the Catholic Church lost their minds completely? I don't know if I should laugh or cry. What the heck is that? What? When you see something like this, it actually is very clarifying. You know, they've lost their mind. They're really not even pretending to be Catholic anymore. You have a man like Archbishop Chaput, who we've disagreed with on a ton of things over the years in the past. I mean, I make no secret of that. But the poor man, I mean, he's over there in Rome right now at this ridiculous synod, begging the Pope and his brother bishops to, you know, nix the LGBTQRS language, you know, from the official synodal document of the church. He said, you can't do this. The case for Catholic tradition is becoming so much easier under Francis that I'm tempted sometimes to write an open letter from the remnant to Pope Francis of gratitude for making it so much easier now to make the case that we've been trying to make. What is traditional? What is the case for tradition? Basically, it's nothing more than a statement of the obvious, a reiteration of statements of the obvious, that 1,965 years of Catholic tradition and traditional liturgy was good, and the nonsense that's happened over the past 50 years is bad. That's all it is. And now under Francis, it's becoming very easy to make that case. Papalatry is dead. The Novus Ordo is in free fall. Their churches are closing down all over the place. Catholic schools are practically, you know, gone extinct now because we've just lost the Catholic identity to such an extent. We don't just have a bad pope in Rome right now. We've got a revolutionary, an occupier, a man who's a sworn enemy of tradition. He's declared war on rigid traditionalism, on the Neopelagians and all these different little the names that he calls us all. But don't forget, as we've said this before, when he goes after rigidity, you know, and traditionalists, he's not referring to the remnant, to Latin Mass traditionalists only. He's referring to everybody over on this side. He's referring to EWTN. He's referring to Raymond Arroyo, Catholic Answers, the whole bit. They're all, as far as he's concerned, rigid, intransigent traditionalists, and we're bad, bad, bad. We need to be moved aside because we need to be having an open and merciful church, or whatever the heck he's talking about these days. It's revolution, though. Everyone who still believes that the infallible doctrines and dogmas of Mother Church trump the shackles of a militant political correctness and a tyrannical New World Order are the enemies of Francis. And folks are waking up to this. Lay people are waking up to it all over the place. Priests, such as our own Father, we have so many Father X's at the remnant, I don't know what to do with them all. Father Chalatus, these are diocesan priests that are standing up in the pulpit Sunday after Sunday, encouraging their flocks to hold fast to tradition, to reject the errors of Vatican II or the New Mass. You don't believe me? Just go check out Remnant TV 2 weeks ago. We put up another sermon from a diocesan priest that called his flock. He called his flock to reject everything new over the past 50 to 100 years, including the novelties of Vatican II. Diocesan priests are waking up. And again, even some bishops now are slowly, gradually stirring themselves. It's harder for bishops. They've been at this for a long time. Collegiality is a powerful drug, you know, and they're not fully awake yet. That Vatican II frat party was really like some, ecclesial John Belushi over at Animal House hosted this thing.
That.
Well, it's kind of like that. They had the woohoo, a really good time, and they were really drunk, really inebriated, and then the hangover, it lasted a long time. It was rough. But some of them are beginning to come out of that. They're stirring themselves to the fact that sheer evil and apostasy is what they're facing now inside the church. And we traditional Catholics cannot be so myopic as to say, well, until you're all the way on our side, we want nothing to do with you. This is an unprecedented opportunity, in other words, for us to bring the cause of restoration and holy tradition right out there into the mainstream. Because the church is dying for tradition. It literally dying for tradition. It needs it, whether it knows it or not, it needs the traditional restoration in order to survive. So what are we going to do? We're going to say, nope, not as long as you don't denounce Vatican II in the new Mass. We're not going to have anything to do with you until you're all the way in our camp because we're the best. That's not constructive. Or do we say, hey, you know what? These guys are waking up out there, and we can't just sit in our little bunkers and our little ghettos and let them fry. They're sitting out there waking, they're stirring them. So we got to go do something, right? Got to go out and meet them halfway. See if maybe now that they see a little bit more accurately, they see the enemy within the church for what it really is, that maybe they could be persuaded to join the traditional Catholic resistance. If we don't try, we're never going to find out. And many of them, even on their own, are becoming more traditional all the time. This is the silver lining of the Francis regime. It's already happening with tens of thousands of lay people for whom Francis was the last straw. It's happening for hundreds of priests, and now even a few bishops. And of course, leading the charge, oh my gosh, Archbishop Vigano. This is history-changing stuff we're seeing. As Catholics, we must be overjoyed and thank God for this. We're taking the cause to the next level. And there's some powerful people who are now coming in to offer some assistance. At the Remnant, we're simply amplifying the message. Tradition should never have been abandoned. Everything that's happening under Francis, the reason it happened is because the abandonment of tradition, liturgically doctrinal tradition. We will never abandon it. We must fight to restore it. And we're not going to shun those priests, however, and those bishops, who, though they're not all the way over, are nevertheless seeing the beast before them for what it truly is and moving away from the beast. Again, if you move away from evil, in this case, you're moving back in the direction of holy tradition. Are these priests and bishops still disoriented? Of course they are. Of course they are. Poor guys. Yes, they are. This has been a demonic assault on the church. There's a lot of disorientation out there. They're in no man's land. They're stumbling around out there in the dark, stumbling towards tradition, maybe even stumbling towards our trenches, the trenches of tradition, if you will. Do we let them stumble around? Those of us who, by the grace of God, have already found these trenches? Or do we load up, strap on our helmets, and go out and give them a hand, lend them a flashlight or a pistol or whatever, call out to them, hey, over here, come on over to tradition. That's the answer. Because right now they don't have a lot of options. And people say, well, but they're Novus Ordo. They're buying into there's a lot of people in history, both in the church and the state, who it took a while for them to figure out what the enemy really looked like. And I'm thinking about in the Vendée, we've been doing this Sacred Heart League over at the Remnant, which has been a huge success. And that's patterned after the Catholic uprising in the Vendée in Western France in the 18th century during the Revolution in Western France. And one of the great generals we keep talking about is General Francois Charette. Now, he's the greatest of the Vendéan generals in this war for altar and throne during the French Revolution. But the trivia question, where do you think the peasants first found old General Charette at the very beginning? You probably know the answer. You've been at the Vendée. Before the war began, they were looking for leadership. And where do you think they finally found General Charette? He was hiding under his bed. They looked everywhere for this guy. They knew that they needed the military leadership to fend off the regular troops. They knew that Charette was in the area. They wanted him. They begged him. He kept turning them down. And then finally, they cornered him in his own house. And they're pounding on his door, and trying to he couldn't sneak out past them, so he slides under the bed. He's hiding out there, hoping they all go away. But the thing is, the peasants, they were persistent, and they found him, and they more or less shamed this veteran general into leading them against the anti-Catholic Freemasonic revolutionary troops of the Revolution. It's a beautiful story. But my point is that the peasants were persistent. They knew they needed this leadership, and they went and got it. And they refused to say, well, he's not good, he's not perfect, he's not one of us. They knew they need him. And we need the same. We need the Viganos. We need the Burkes. We need the Morlinos. We need the good bishops who are sort of coming around now, some of them much more openly than others. So every one of us, we look at the bishops and we think we can judge them and they should do this and they should do that. I think we're forgetting that every one of us in the church since, over the past 50 years, over the past 100 years of revolution against Christ the King, against the church, again, don't forget, Pope St. Pius X was warning us 100 and some years ago, long before the Second Vatican Council, that this crisis was coming. So we've lived through this for many, many generations now, we Catholics. Every one of us has been impacted by this great apostasy, which is roaring all around us. Every one of us has been influenced one way or another by what Sister Lucia of Fatima described as diabolical disorientation. We all are impacted by that. And if you think you're not somehow, you've escaped it all, or your children are not, your children, I fear for your children, because we have to anticipate this diabolical disorientation every day. The clerical sex abuse scandal in the priesthood, oh my gosh, we haven't even begun to understand the impact and the ramifications of that scandal on our kids. So we're all suffering through this darkness. And what's needed right now is, of course, is prayer and strategy and the intention to keep the faith, to keep the old faith. And that's going to be a struggle. And everybody's trying to find the best way of doing that, including these priests and bishops who aren't all the way there yet. But they're coming in the right direction. And we all need leadership. We all need to come together, have meetings of the minds behind enemy lines in this occupied territory. Some of these meetings might be clandestine gatherings of Catholic soldiers of Christ who know they have to fight. They're ready to defend the kingship of Christ, but don't necessarily know how yet. They need training. They need expertise. They need leadership. Just like the Vendéans needed charrette, needed military leadership. So do we. And so this, dear friends, this is kind of the point of this episode of The Underground. This is what the Catholic Identity Conference out in Pittsburgh, coming up here in a few weeks, it's what it's all about. And I want to encourage you, as I close this program, to please join us. This is not, as so many of our detractors suggest, it's not traddy ecumenism. Rather, it's Catholics from war-torn lands who sort of snuck out into the night in order to find other Catholics from other camps who are not at all happy by the way things are going in the church. And they're ready to band together and see if some organized and principled countermeasures, counter-revolution, can be put into play. This is just common sense. Because our way of life, our church, our mass, everything right now is under full-fledged attack. And though there are differences between the various camps, we have to look at the enemy who wants to destroy us as a more clear and proximate danger. See if there's any way that we can band together to oppose him. So we're beating back against the polarization and the division that's always of the devil. We're using the Rosary, the League of the Sacred Heart, the Latin Mass as shield and sword and defense while we're expanding the Catholic counter-revolution. And you know what? It's working. It's going to be held in Weirton, West Virginia, which is just 20 minutes outside of Pittsburgh, on November 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And again, we'll have representatives of the Society of St. Pius X speaking, Fraternity of St. Peter, Society of Good Shepherd, lots and lots of diocesan and order priests, a bishop or two are going to join us, and lay people, again, lay Catholics from all the different camps of tradition, some not from tradition, some other folks in the Novus Ordo who are just sick and tired of it, and they want to come over and talk. We're making lots of converts and people who just want to come over and see what we have to say as traditional Catholics. Pretty much that's what the CIC is all about. I really hope you'll consider joining us, again, November 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, that this is going to be happening. I think if you go to CatholicIdentityConference.org, that's the website. Go over there. You can check out the lineup now. The schedule's online. The speakers, I think the topics of the speakers are even online. I'm going to be the MC, so if that's a selling point or not, I don't know. Chris Ferrara will be there. John Rao, just all the usual. A couple of top-notch journalists, including a Rome correspondent from LifeSite News, one of my favorite websites in the world. Professor Roberto De Mattei from Rome. He's coming all the way from Rome to be. It's going to be a big deal. Catholic Family News, our brothers from Catholic Family News will be there. It's going to be really, really a great thing. I really hope you'll consider joining us and go, like again, CatholicIdentityConference.org. You can register online, and I think it's going to be a really wonderful time, an opportunity for traditional Catholics to sort of recharge their batteries and to talk about the strategy that I'm really thinking is so important right now. Hope you'll join us November 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. God bless you. Thanks for listening. I'm Michael Matt from the Remnant Underground, and we'll see you next week.